Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings, welcome to one in my canal series. Today we're on the Kennet Avon Canal, that grand navigation that links the city of Bath to the town of Reading in Berkshire, which is about 35 miles northeast of where I currently am. I'm near the village of Great Bedwin. In fact, I'm between Great Bedwin and Little Bedwin at a place called Crofton. This behind me is Sam Farmer Lock and bridge number 101. Sam Farmer, incidentally, he was a philanthropist and he was also an environmentalist who lived in Little Bedwin Manor House, I say a couple of miles away from here, which I did do a video about a little while ago. I think he died in about 1926. But the lock here, there's a Sam Farmer Trust, and the lock here was actually restored by the Sam Farmer Trust in the middle of the 1980s. Now, just to recap a little bit about the Kennet Avon Canal. It went through an Act of Parliament in 1794, but there's a lot of history before that to get the mighty Thames linked up down towards the Bristol and Bath area. Obviously you've got the Avon flowing through Bristol and Bath. Sections of that were made navigable. Of course, you've got the new cut there with the floating harbour and the other section of the canal there that links it all together, the floating canal. But it wasn't until 1794 that there was an Act of Parliament to link the entire thing from Bath right through to Reading. It took another 14 years for that waterway all the way from Reading down to Bath to be completely completed. But sadly, by the Second World War, it had fallen into disrepair before becoming probably completely unnavigable around by 1950. However, as you can see, that wasn't the end of the story, because in the 1960s, inspired by LTC Rolt and his ventures there, got the narrowboat, and he did it on one. He tried to actually get through part of what was left of the Kennet Avon Canal and said it was in a terrible state. It kind of started a momentum of the canal revival and canal restoration movement. But why have I come to this location here in Wiltshire on the Kennet Avon? Well, it's a special event. Just a few times a year, they have the Crofton Pumping Station in steam. And yes, it is one of those days today. So we're going to make our way along the towpath here to have a look at the two giant steam engines that are in there inside Crofton steam pumping engine here by the Kennet Avon in Wiltshire. Now I've come round now to lock number 59. In fact, you can still see the bridge where we started just up here. And just over there, just over that hedge line there, you might be able to make out some railway fences. So if you actually catch a train out of London Paddington, head down into the further southwest towards Plymouth and Penzance, you will come through right here, paralleling the Kennet Avon Canal, because obviously we're following the land, or rather the line of the quarter. So the railway and the canal run parallel to each other for quite some section of time. I think it's probably about 20 miles or so, and there is a station up there at Great Bedwin. But what was the purpose of this pumping station here on the Kennet Avon Canal? Well, of course, it's all to do with water supply. Have we seen previously on the Cotswold canals, on the section of the Thames and Severn, on high ground there, they've got that rocky, high, leaky ground there around Coates. And when that goes into water there, obviously it's an abandoned section now, undergoing restoration, but it's a long-term project. They'll need to do something about stopping the water losses on that and getting the water in there. In fact, there was a pumping engine there, which came from the town of Liskeard in Cornwall there, near Coates at Thames Head, at one time to get water into the Thames and Severn. Here, though, they did something similar. Just further down there is a bit of water called Wilton Water. In fact, there's a windmill near there as well and a bit of a Roman road. So I'm hoping to have a look at that after I finish filming here at Crofton, do that as a separate short bite video, I feel. So it was to get water into the canal from a little bit further on down the contour of the valley to get it up into this line of the Kennet Avon Canal. And they used two engines, two giant steam pumping engines. You can just see them over there. I can see some smoke coming up the chimney, but it's just covered by the trees. I've got a time ticket for 3:30 p.m. entry, so I'm going to head over there, just drop my rucksack off and tripod, and then we're going to have a look around and see what we can. Now, I'm not sure what the sound's going to be like. I've got a little lavalier microphone on with me this morning, or this afternoon, shall I say. I'm not sure if that's going to pick up the narration of anybody talking in the room about the pumping engines themselves. If it doesn't pick it up, what I'll do is I'll do a voiceover narration. I'll make some notes and talk about it while I show you the images of the pumping engines in use. Anyway, hope you enjoy the tour here at Crofton on the Kennet Avon Canal. So this here is the leat, as you can see here. We're at Crofton Pumping Station and the leat in front of us. It's got the water from the leat going directly into the canal. And that's pumped up from Wilton water through a culvert into the pumping station. And there's the leat along there with the water flowing along it. But it's only in action when the pumping station is working. This is the pumping station here. There is actually a project to replace the windows. I think they need £300,000, which is a lot of money obviously to replace those because obviously they're listed. This is the leat in front of the pumping station. And in case you're wondering where the chimney is, well, that's a little bit further over here on the left hand side. And there it is, that's the one we could see from the canal. There it is there. Amazing. It's a bit like the Smitham chimney I was at with Darren the other day at on the Mendips in Somerset there, but yeah, this one is still in use. It's extraordinary. This magnificent beast here is a Lancashire boiler. It's similar to the one installed in the boiler house. It weighs 20 tonnes and in service it would hold 18 tonnes of boiling water, and it's preserved here as an operational spare. The water spaces are sealed and contain trays of andrynous lime to keep them dry. And the furnace tubes and outer shell are treated with a special preservative to prevent corrosion. That's fantastic. Something else just up these steps here as well. Let's have a look at that. Occasionally you'll see water spurting up here, and it was built in around 1812. The Bolton and Watt engine was installed here, and the boiler header pond stores excess recycled water from the engine so it can be reused back in the boiler again. So it's shooting up obviously only when the engines are working. So here we have the header pond, and you can see there is the boiler. That's the condenser, and that's the steam cylinder that goes up there. And there's a feeder for it. There's the well, and there's our culvert with the lead we showed you going down to the canal. When originally built, the engines worked at £5 per square inch, and the height difference between the header pond and the boiler, because it's higher up, gave enough pressure to allow water to flow from the pond into the lower pressure wagon boilers. The chimney was actually restored from a grant behind the Manifold Trust, also the Kennet Avon Canal Trust, and visitors to the site here, which I think has been opened since 1970, some 55 years ago. A magnificent piece of work and engineering that chimney is in itself. It's absolutely fantastic. Now this here is an Archimedes screw water pump. It's a simple human powered water pump when they're actually draining the canal. Well, that was used around the turn of the 20th century, no longer used. And I think they found one of them buried in the bed of the canal, which was excavated in Hungerford in Berkshire, which is not far away from here at all. You can actually see a photograph here showing the pump in action around 1910, just there. Wonderful. And that's there as the pump was recovered during the restoration of the canal. So this is the old smithy here, so you can get teas and coffees and light refreshments here, which is great. So here we're looking down at the railway line, so to the left is Paddington, to the right Penzance, and that's the Kennet Avon Canal, locked down at the bottom. And just over the other side there is Wilton Water. You can just make that out there, which is where the water supply comes from to go into the Kennet Avon Canal. So now we're going to go into the Crofton Pumping Station. There it is. So it's got a Transport Heritage Site red roundel there. As you can see, today it's open. Coming round now to the coal yard, which is obviously powers the pumping station here. You can certainly smell the coal and the smoke already. So we're now looking down on the main boiler here. You can see it's lagged with lots of bricks which are manufactured in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. The chains there as well, pulleys going across. That's huge, and I can actually feel the heat coming off the boiler here as well. And down there you can see the men putting the coal in. And you can see the red of the furnace glowing on their faces. Wow, amazing, especially with feeling the heat as well. Just the sound of all the engines in here as well is an extraordinary. All that steam and smoke, noise. I hope you can hear me above the noise that's inside the pumping station here, Crofton. So this here is the cylinder head room that we're in at the moment. See the piston going up and down there. The scale of it is extraordinary.
The inlet valve just opens for a short time.
So there's actually two engines here. One there and another one here. So this beam here is the Wiltshire one of 1812, which was restored, so reopened in 1970. We have another one on the right, and this beam here is Harvest of Hail, 1846. Hail as in West Cornwall, somewhere I used to work moons ago. And just watch that powerful beam there go up and down. It's an extraordinary sight. You can hear the rush of water as well as it goes through the system. You can actually feel the building itself slightly shake with each stroke of the beam because of the pure force and weight of it. Wow. amazing Crofton pump engine house here by the banks of the Kennet and Avon. But to get to the Kennet and Avon, what we need to do now, after finishing our tour around those amazing Bournemouth and Harveys of Hale engines there, the beams, we need to go down here, which will take us underneath the main Paddington to Penzance railway line, under there. So that's the tracks. We need to go under there. It does warn you about the headroom because it is quite low. So this bit here is the railway line, so inlet to Crofton Pumping Station. So you've actually got these screens here as well to filter out reeds, but so that takes it up there and pumps it around the system. And that direction is looking back to the canal itself. They put these nice little steps in here by the lock. So now looking across Wiltshire Pool, which is the source of the water that goes into the Kennet and Avon Canal, this section here in Wiltshire, near the village of Great Bedwin. Now something that isn't obvious is why you might be thinking, does the water not flow directly from Wilton water there into the canal? Well, it's to get to the water up to a higher level. So we're here in terms of contour lines. There's Crofton Pumping Station. But what it does, going through that lead, it gets the water through pipes up to here, to the entrance of Bruce Tunnel, which is 12 metres above, which is half a kilometre long. And then you've got the long drop down towards Bath and Bristol. Originally there was going to be a much longer tunnel proposed by John Ray, which is 4 kilometres, but I think the shareholders had other ideas on that one. Well, in case you're wondering why it's gone a little bit smoky behind me, it's not a sudden descent of mist along the canal. It is in fact a farmer burning off stubble on the field there, adjacent to the railway track as well, which is a kind of a little bit hazardous, I guess. I hope you've enjoyed the tour of the Crofton Pumping Station in steam here on the Kennet and Avon Canal in one of our canal series here on West Country Wanderings. There'll be another one in the not too distant future. Until then, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, hope to see you soon. All the best for now. Bye bye.